Hi, I'm Councilwoman Laura Pastor, and I'm here at the Walter Cronkite Gallery. I'm so excited because I'm here with Rosemarie Dombrowski. Did I say that correctly?
You did, perfectly.
Okay, perfect. She is the first Poet Laureate for the city.
I am.
So what does that mean?
Well, it means that I'm an ambassador of poetry. It means that I am going to be working in all levels of the community to promote the literary arts, promote the reading of the literary arts, the participation in the literary arts, and hopefully the performance of the literary arts as well, especially when it comes to our youth.
So how did you get involved in poetry, Rosemarie? Because I don't even know where I would even begin.
It's a geeky hobby, I know. My mother was a big fan of nursery rhymes, and she read them to me regularly as an infant, and I think I was memorizing them by the time I was 2. So there was just something about the cadence that I felt very comfortable with, and I think I found it comforting as well. I spent most of my life as a dancer, and then
I didn't know that about you.
I did, and then as I got older and my body grew a little tired of that, I realized that poetry was just another form of performance art, and it felt like an easy transition for me. It was another way to express myself through the arts, using my body, using my mind, and now also using language.
So just hearing that makes me excited, because then that makes me want to participate or enjoy poetry, but learn to really use that as an art form, but also to be able to deliver a message. Now, you talked about nursery rhymes. How important is it for parents to read to their children or engage in nursery rhymes, because then it leads to literacy?
I think it's immensely important because we love what we know and we love what we learn in our youth. I don't know that any other 10 or 11 or 12-year-old would develop a fondness for poetry spontaneously. I think a teacher or a parent introducing it to them at a very young age, again, you develop the love for the sound quality of it, for the imagery of it, for the narrative of it, for the magic of it.
So just in this conversation, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, how would I get my son, who is really challenging when it comes to reading or literacy in general? And I think of rap music. And I kind of look at it, and as you're describing it, looking at it as a kind of a form of poetry.
It is.
Okay.
I was going to suggest that, in
right.
fact. I mean, there's so many hip hop artists who started in the spoken word community. And I can always tell within the first couple of seconds of a song whether or not that person was a poet before they became a hip hop mogul or before they became a rap artist. So Kendrick Lamar is the most obvious example. He was definitely a poet. He was very involved in the spoken word community. I think he was a slam poet. I think he was competitive before he became a rapper.
So that's really, that's exciting to me, because there's times in the district that we have a poetry open mic and spoken word. And really what the poetry also tells a story, which could also lead to oral stories or storytelling in the way the poetry is written.
Absolutely. I think all forms of storytelling can also be considered forms of poetry. Poetry exists in varying lengths. It exists in varying sound qualities and varying rhythms, and gets spoken differently in different communities. But I don't see why that can't all come together under the umbrella of poetry.
So the other piece is, like someone like me, or how do you involve anybody of all ages to even think about wanting to read poetry or even write poetry? How do you get them involved in writing poetry?
I think reading might be the first step, and I just had a meeting with the Phoenix Downtown Neighborhood Alliance, and we read some love poems together, and they found a couple of them to be really accessible. They were very contemporary poems. They weren't 19th century love poems. And they found a couple to be not so accessible. And that's when I realized that a lot of people just don't have their ear tuned to hear a poem and immediately understand what it's about. And so I started thinking about the value of giving handouts at readings, which is something we go back and forth with in the poetry community. I think it would be nice sometimes for people to have a copy of the poem in front of them so that they can read along as the poet is reading, and so that they can revisit it later and find out which parts of the poem were accessible and which weren't, and which parts spoke to them and which didn't. Like when we read a novel, do we love every page of the novel? We don't. So I don't think that an audience necessarily needs to crack every single stanza of a poem in order to to appreciate it. I think when the poet loves the craft and is transmitting the poem with that kind of passion and love of craft, that's what the audience receives. They get infused with that same passion. But for them to be able to revisit it later, I think is also important.
So being the first Poet Laureate, you also have another, I would say, job or position. Can you please describe what you do?
I thought, are you talking about the one at ASU or the one I have
I'm
at
talking
home?
well, we all have, okay, we have many hats that we
That's true.
roles that we play.
I have a
And
few.
yes, I would say I have many, but and we all have many, especially as women, we have many roles that we play.
Absolutely.
But I'm talking about at ASU, and then I'll talk about the one at home.
Okay, great. I'll talk about both happily. I'm a senior lecturer at ASU on the downtown campus. I have been down here since 2006, which was the year that the campus opened, and downtown Phoenix is my home. I know that Tempe campus is still an important campus, and I'm affiliate faculty of creative writing. I teach the face-to-face creative writing classes on the downtown campus. So I am sort of considered, sanctioned by the creative writing department to be that person on the downtown campus. And it's a role that I value immensely because I don't work with poets and creative writers on the downtown campus. I work with journalists, I work with social workers, I work with people who are going out into the community and doing real work with the community, but I'm also giving them the tools to be able to relay some of the stories that they collect in the community in a more creative, personal, evocative way.
And really what you're creating is connectivity.
Absolutely.
And it's creating connectivity with whoever it is within the community to connect.
Absolutely.
And be able to then tell your story, but not also tell your story, but also listen to other stories.
That's right.
And that's what's exciting about this. It's very important to the city, it's very important to me, but it's gonna hit us in a different, it's gonna come back to us in many different fashions or ways or phases of how important it is to us. What I would like to say is thank you for joining me. I am Councilwoman Pastor in the heart of the city and rockin' District 4. As we end, Rosemarie is going to read a poem, E equals MC squared.
E equals MC squared. I've forgotten how to spread honey on toast, how to finagle the medium-sized bowls into the racks. I haven't combed my hair in days. I can't remember if permanent means indelible or its opposite. I'm beginning to understand the last days of Hemingway. The porch is covered in yellowing weeds and dried feathers. I grab an apple from the bag of pink ladies and realize there's mold on the stem, that everything's approaching its expiration. I tell you not to visit me in the hospital. In desperation, I ride a dinosaur on the playground. I dream of roasting marshmallows around the flame of a gas burner. In the car, I hold a painting of a hummingbird on my lap. I'm wearing a phoenix around my neck because I want to believe in resurrection. As the car accelerates, we talk about the meaning of E equals MC squared. We decide that too much knowledge is sometimes too much, but we know there's no going back.